Hello. Hello, everybody. Hello. Great. So we're going to talk a bit more about mining today. Before we change the topic, I'm Zanganeh, and I'm the CEO of Acme Swiss Tech, which is a startup born out of the initiatives of Lugano Plan B. So I'm very proud to be here and talk about what we're doing in the field of mining and present you our projects. We're also the partner of Tether for their mining projects. So I'll be also giving you a short update on how Tether is doing with their mining activities. And here we go. So in Bitcoin, we always talk about decentralization, and it's kind of a buzzword and a hype word sometimes, but it is really, really important for Bitcoin survival to be like a whack-a-mole. So it should be impossible to remove all the most important actors and players that are holding Bitcoin up. So one of them, as we all know, are the Bitcoin nodes. So everybody can run a Bitcoin node at their home. It helps decentralization. If you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, companies, individuals who are running a Bitcoin node that are validating the transactions, it is just difficult for any institution or government to just go and try to cut off everybody from the network, and that makes it very resilient. The other side is Bitcoin mining, which is also very important to be decentralized. That's even more important because it's more difficult to hide a Bitcoin miner than to hide a Bitcoin node. So a Bitcoin miner is connected to the grid or connected to a kind of an electricity source. If you have it in large scale, it's very difficult to have it completely hidden from the government or from the operator, from the utility company. So it's very important to be as spread around the world in different kind of applications as possible. And that is what is our mission at Acme Swiss Tech, to drive the decentralization of Bitcoin mining by creating products that are economically incentivized and appealing for a whole range of actors. So we see that decentralization drive that we're working on in two ways. One of them is to decentralize by actor. So a person can be a Bitcoin miner, a single family home can mine Bitcoin, a small enterprise can mine Bitcoin, a big enterprise can mine Bitcoin. And then, of course, you can also have pure Bitcoin miners that do only Bitcoin mining, which is right now the vast majority of Bitcoin mining is done by entities that do actually only that in very large numbers. So that's one way that we want to drive the decentralization of Bitcoin mining and make it more resilient. And the other way is to decentralize by country or by political region. So that's, of course, very important. As we have seen, there was a very strong concentration of hash rates of Bitcoin mining in China until some years ago. And then there was a China ban, which was, I think, a blessing in disguise for Bitcoin, really. But we saw a large chunk of it move to the United States, North America. So now we have around 30 to 40% there. Often publicly traded companies. That's, of course, very good for investors and the general adoption of Bitcoin, but it's also a risk. So if you are publicly listed companies, you are inherently under the pressure of governments to do basically what they say. We think about, the West and liberal democracy and capitalism and all those things, but there are many, many examples of, even in the United States, like prohibiting private ownership of gold in the 30s, where everybody had to just give back their gold to the central bank and receive some money for it. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that something like that can happen as well. So it's very important for us with our partners to invest in regions that are politically different or neutral or diverse, so we can contribute to the decentralization of the Bitcoin network and make it more resilient to any kind of attacks. The other point that is very important, which I think is changing now with the time, is like until some years ago, and even now, most of the Bitcoin mining is very opportunistic. So it's usually a crazy entrepreneur who is crazy enough to put money in running some kind of machines that are connected to the grid and mine Bitcoin. And it's more and more becoming sophisticated actors that actually know about the energy, about electricity grid, about different kinds of use cases and value chains that you can actually tap into. So that's how we see it as well, is as a Bitcoin miner, I think it becomes more and more important and interesting to look at actually different parts of where Bitcoin is gonna interact with the whole energy grid. So one thing that is very interesting and important is the energy production. So you look into where can actually somebody also produce their own energy to do Bitcoin mining. This allows you to better use basically your source of electricity. Then, of course, we have Bitcoin mining as a central part that is a very easy and clean way to just transform energy into money, which is a great thing to do, I think. So having an option of you produce energy, what you do with it, you can sell it to the grid, but then you're bound by local market conditions, you're maybe bound by the utility rates, or there's another free market option, which is Bitcoin mining, and I'm going to turn my electricity into Bitcoin, and there's the free market that is deciding how much that is worth. You want to be integrated with the grid. So that allows you to become more resilient. If your plant is not producing or if you need more power, you can take it from the grid, and allows other kinds of business models as well, like providing services to the grid, shutting down, ramping up, balancing the grid, and so on and so forth. And we see that more and more happening around the world. And then one aspect that is very important is the heat utilization. So Bitcoin mining basically turns electricity into heat, produces some Bitcoin, and that heat can be used for many different processes. It can be something more sophisticated, like a district heat system to warm houses in large scale. But it can be as simple as just heating the environment in your home or drying fruit. There are some great examples, actually, where people are just drying fruit at Bitcoin miners. And the good thing about Bitcoin mining is like it's very clean. It's just producing hot air like a hair dryer. So you don't have to worry about contamination and chemicals and so on that you have with gas burners and so on. So these are all the aspects that are very important to Bitcoin mining. And I think if a miner has control of all of these aspects, it makes just for a much better, resilient business model for them. So one of the projects that we worked on that is we're particularly proud of, it's basically a child of the Lugano Plan B, which is a collaboration between us, Acme Swiss Tech, which is an innovative company in the field of renewable energies and Bitcoin mining, with a very traditional company, Gabbani, that is one of the oldest families and companies working in the hospitality business in Ticino and in Lugano, where we are producing a good that is kind of powered by Bitcoin mining, if you wish, in renewables. It's called the Banettone, which is a play of words with panettone, which is a very typical South Switzerland and Italian sweet bread for celebrations. And this Banettone that you actually can also purchase in the tent from Gabbani is produced by a collaboration that we have, which is to place a 100 kilowatt photovoltaic plant on their production facility, use the excess electricity for mining Bitcoin, and in the process, the electricity that they produce with the photovoltaic cells, they use in their production process, and we use the excess heat also for ambient heating of the facility. So this is an example, but it's a very interesting one because it is an interesting business model, because now Europe and the whole world is going through some kind of an energy transition, which means we need to produce much more PV plants and wind and all of those things and integrate it with the grid. It's a big challenge. That's my background, is I was working for the utility company in Lugano to work on this energy transition. And the amount of photovoltaic plants that we have to build is way above any capacity that we have. It's like we need to double every day the installed capacity, and we're just very far from that. So we need to look at different incentivizations that we can produce more PV plants, also driven by the private sector directly. And this is a great example because there are many small enterprises, medium enterprises that have a large building, like the one we see here. But they wouldn't have the need for all the electricity that would be produced by that photovoltaic plant. So often they're not incentivized, and with the money that they would get from the utility company is not interesting enough for them. So it's an interesting business model, business case, that you place the PV cell, then you have a Bitcoin miner, and then you have an algorithm that decides, am I gonna you're going to consume what you need, and then you decide, am I going to sell the excess to the grid, or am I going to do Bitcoin mining? And that can be, of course, all automated. And it creates a great new additional revenue stream also for such companies. And of course, we need to take away all the technical burden, the technological burden from these companies, which is exactly what we do at Acme Swisstech. So I think this is a very interesting concept that we are now seeing more and more interest for also in Switzerland and in Europe. But then we also are working on a totally different kind of project, which is very, very large scale Bitcoin mining facilities together with Tether. In this case, in Latin America, you can see two of our plants, and these are really large scale Bitcoin mining sites. So we are now bringing online our first large scale Bitcoin mining facility, and this is a different ball game. So it's not a small company. It's not somebody who is doing another business. This is like actually the mining business itself. And you have a whole different set of challenges there as well. So it's much more industrial application. You have challenges such as a pump breaking down that you can see on the left, and then you have to fix it, and then the other thing is breaking down, you have to fix it. So issues like that. Or you have the thing in the middle, if anybody's doing Bitcoin mining here with immersion cooling, you probably have some cold sweat running down your back. This is what happens if a heat exchanger breaks and you're mixing oil and water. So if you know it maybe from a car, if you mix oil and water, then you're kind of screwed. But if you do it with electronic machines such as Bitcoin miners, then you have a real problem. So that's like a couple $100,000 worth of Bitcoin miners that are sitting in an oil-water mixture, waiting for their fate to be decided. But more interestingly, or more importantly, there are also the cultural challenges and the know-how challenges. Because obviously you're going to recruit locals, you're not going to import people from abroad. This is a totally new technology. Nobody knows how it works. There are very few people. You have to find the right people. You have to educate them. You have to bring them up to speed about what this is all about. You have to learn about how to fix these things. And it's a big challenge that there is in order to realize large-scale mining farms. That is also very, very rewarding and very interesting. So it's different kind of challenges that you face every day. Then another thing that we're working on is, first of all, together with Tether, what we're doing is like we are now in the phase that we are analyzing all different types of suppliers of machines, suppliers of containerized solutions, of cooling distribution units. We are making a scientific approach to gather enough data to understand which kind of miners are performing better. We are very closely working together with the vendors to try to improve the products or work on different features that are necessary for what we discussed at the beginning to integrate it better with other services. Because we don't like to make our life easy, we like to make it very difficult. So we have like 10 different types of miners on one site where already nobody knows how they're working. So it's just like a big challenge to learn about that. And since we don't like to make it easy, another thing that we're tackling is the whole management of the mining site. And that's something that we see that is it's quite an important, in my opinion, lack of available tools in the Bitcoin mining industry. It's like you have a mining farm has the electricity component, so you have the electricity coming in, you have transformers distributing the power, then you have the miners with their single machines that are doing the calculations. That is like giving you a lot of information, it's very important. But you also have the system that cools these down, that can be water cooled, it can be immersion cooled, so you have pumps and things that are turning and have to work well for the miner to work well. A lot of interdependencies. And right now, the market is really a patchwork of different software. So you have like a couple of tools that run the electricity, you turn it on and off. You have a power meter there that is then detached from what the miner is doing, what it's producing, the temperatures that it has, the issues that it has. Then you have another like kind of set of tools that you try to work with in order to run the cooling units and everything else. So what we're doing with Tether is creating a software that is a fully integrated mining and energy management software. So it's called Moria, and it is being developed by a great team. And what this means is that you are not going to, so what the vendors really like to do is like they have their own kind of proprietary software, and you have to use ours if you want to do this, and that company is like, you have to use ours if you want to do that. And what we want to do is like, we want to say, okay, no, we want to actually interact with an API with the miner, with the container, with the cooling distribution unit, with the power meters, with the transformers, with everything. We gather all the data into our software, and like that, we can also see actual interdependencies between all these different components and all these different data points that are produced in order to optimize the performance of the site. So it's not only looking at the miner, how much it's producing, or like the worst case is some miners just look at the pools, so just at the economic output, without looking actually at the technical input that is producing that economic output. So that is very important for us to bring these two things together. It allows us to have a full overview of the whole site, aggregated bottom up, so we can look at one miner, we can look at an aggregate of miner in a tank or in a rack, we can look at the aggregate of miners in a container with the distribution unit, we can see the temperatures that we have at any moment, we can see at any moment any miner in any position, what kind of performance it's having, what kind of issues it's having, how many miners have errors, where do we have fails, why do we have failings, and this allows us to, first of all, operate the site. So this is a tool that is used for everything, for operation. That's very important. So you have an overview of everything that you're running. You turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, put in different operating modes, overclock, underclock, all of those things. And the big advantage of having everything in one software suite is that we're having here, like in a medium-sized mining plant, you have maybe around 15 to 20,000 internet-connected devices that each are producing maybe 10 to 15 data points every couple of seconds. So analyzing that with the eye or with an Excel sheet is very difficult. And that's where we have actually a very interesting use case of having AI assistant analysis that allows us to do a fault recognition, fault analysis, understanding what's happening, improve the performance, improve the OpEx. And it's not only, again, it's not a buzzword in this case. It is actually very, very interesting, very useful to apply pattern recognition on large amounts of data to see which miner is performing how, why, what are the reasons? Is there a pattern? Does it have to do with the location of the tank? Does it have to do with the type of supplier of the PSU or the PDU or so on and so forth? So this is a great tool that allows us to really master the whole value chain of Bitcoin mining. And then in the future also, in our project that we're going to build also large-scale photovoltaic plants or wind parks that we're going to connect with the grid and with Bitcoin miners. It's going to allow us also to do like short-term predictions of the energy production. Depending on that, decide how we're going to run the miners, turn some off, turn some on, overclock, underclock, how much we're going to sell to the grid, how much we're going to buy from the grid to manage the whole site. So that is also something that is very important we're working on. We are very interested in research and development and understanding things on a very basic and fundamental level. So we have several collaborations with different universities, locally and internationally, where we're looking at temperature distribution within the miner to see, can we raise this temperature to enable other use cases for the heat that is being produced? Can we modify the temperature to increase the efficiency and how it works? Even like chip placement, can we improve the chip placement to make the whole cooling more efficient, and so on and so forth. So that's another pillar that we are following very closely, also with the main producers of mining machines, that we are seeing very interesting results so far as well. And last but not least, we also have several international partnerships around the world, one of which is actually with El Salvador that we just saw before. Actually, Josue, who is from Volcano Energy, the CEO of Volcano Energy, missed the flight, so he wasn't here. But that's the collaboration that we do with El Salvador, where we are, together with them, building several hundreds of megawatts of renewable energy capacity, as well as some electricity lines and grids, together with mining to do, again, kind of bring the best out of these two worlds of energy, electricity production, electricity grid, and Bitcoin mining, and create interesting results. So that was all for my talk. I hope it was interesting, and thank you very much for your attention.